Thanks for taking the time to jump on the call. We're just going to chat a little bit about how you've been using the agent for the last couple of months now. So before I kick things off, do you just want to give us a bit of background about the space that you're in, company size, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I am Gabby. I'm the content manager at Randstad UK. We have a presence in a lot of different markets. We're a global company. And within my marketing team, I sit in the content function. So I oversee all of our sort of content production as well as our social media handling, which includes sort of community management and all aspects across social and the different platforms where we are.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of different platforms that are involved. And then when we first started chatting, you came to us about Reddit specifically. Yeah, Reddit is a place famously hostile, especially for large recruiting agencies. We've got some subreddits in there that are 1 million members strong, and it can be quite a brutal place. So before you started running the agent, like, what were your reservations about entering Reddit with a branded presence?
Yeah, I would say sort of Reddit is, as you say, quite notorious for people give their very honest, unfiltered opinions. So I guess the risk of any big company like Randstad, where we're the biggest sort of HR company in the world, is that people are not going to be sort of afraid to give their opinions, and you've got to be very conscious, very methodical about how you go out from a branded account. How do you want to sort of communicate with those audiences? Where's the best place for you to be kind of involving yourself in the conversation versus where are you doing a little bit more of that like firefighting, which I know is something we talked about in that sort of exploration phase. Is it best to try change people's minds who are very decided about what they want, or is it better to go down more of an avenue, which was your recommendation about being present before kind of people have made up their mind and writing maybe a little bit more of a vitriolic sort of comment? So from a branded account, you always just run the risk of, are you going out with sort of the right tone of voice? Where are the conversations you want to be involved in? And who is going to be managing those sorts of conversations and deciding sort of what is said in those different subreddits? As you sort of touched on as well, recruitment companies, this is quite prolific in the UK. I know it's a global issue as well. People can have quite sort of negative experiences working with recruiters. So I think a lot of that sort of experience then goes into the comments. So I would say the recruitment industry specifically does get a lot of negative sort of sentiment. But it is really important from a brand awareness perspective for us as Randstad, just because in the UK, I think there's something like 35,000 recruitment companies. You've really got to be known, and you do have to be out there and part of the conversations.
Yeah, true. I mean, you touch on some good points there, specifically with, you know, Reddit being a brutal place specifically for that vertical. You know, unfettered, honest feedback of what people really think. Yeah, don't go to LinkedIn if you want people's honest opinions. Go to Reddit, right? You sort of touched on it a little bit, but I just want you to just walk me through again sort of what the day-to-day looked like before you were running the agentic workflows, and sort of what it's done and shaped, sort of how it's helped you now in the few months it's been live.
Yeah, absolutely. So any kind of community management for people that work in social media and content will kind of understand it's a very manual process. You have to find sort of those relevant comment sections or subreddits or whatever channel you're on. You do have to find those relevant places that you want to be sort of involved in the conversation, where to post, what to say. And it is a very time-consuming task, A, to find stuff, and B, to then also get the responses. So having that type of automation set up is just really a no-brainer, because it's a very time-intensive task. And even from a well-being standpoint, It can be quite intense to have to sift through comments that can be quite negative and quite vitriolic. Some, of course, can be positive, but when you're sort of trying to balance what your brand sentiment is, there's a good chance that you will be coming across sort of a lot of sort of negative comments and that type of sentiment. So yeah, I guess the main point really for us is just how much time and resource it would take to run that effectively. And we know more and more as we're learning about LLMs and where they're pulling information, that places like Reddit are really important. So it's essential to be on those platforms and be sort of partaking in the conversations in the right sort of way.
Yeah, the sort of the point that you just touched on there, the well-being thing, I was going to ask you that next, but it's sort of as an agency, that's what surprised or has been surprising us the most, is to get feedback like that. It's not something that's often considered, having to deal with online negativity, especially sort of in anonymous communities where it can get pretty nasty. So that's been a learning for us, and good to see. Is there anything else that has changed in your day-to-day since it's been running?
I would say that's definitely one of the surprising sort of wins, has been that someone doesn't have to sit and read all those comments themselves, because like you said, they can be quite negative. So I'd say from a well-being standpoint, it's also something as a company, there are a lot of measures in place to look after sort of employee well-being. So this is kind of like a great side benefit that aligns quite well with what we're trying to do as a company. So it's great that it can then safeguard kind of our own employees from having to deal with reading those types of comments, thinking of responses. And, I think especially because usernames on Reddit can be quite anonymized, so people can hide behind saying stuff that, I know we talked about LinkedIn as an example. People do have sort of their company and their name attached to that, so there's even more protection. Kind of, they probably won't go full force, whereas on Reddit it can be quite extreme. I'd say kind of the other huge benefit for us has definitely been the time saving. We're a very resource strapped marketing team, so being able to focus on something that we know is really important, but it's something that keeps getting sort of bumped down the list of priorities just because someone will really have to manually implement that, has been a huge win and benefit for us.
Yeah, and especially sort of it's another tangential point slightly, but especially with just how much AI stuff is also now coming out, filtering through the amount of noise can it just gets intense after a while when there's just so much, right? So yeah, the giving the time back is a nice one to hear from your side. Maybe just the last point to touch on before we wrap up. Are there sort of any other people, sort of marketing teams, customer support teams, anything that you think using these kind of workflows could be useful for?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, obviously, because it's something quite aligned with what Randstad sort of does, and us being a very big global company, I think it would help sort of enterprise clients really standardize what that process looks like from a global perspective. We're a company that has marketing teams in different markets, and yes, while people are posting in different languages, etc., I think it's a really nice way to standardize what that process looks like. So if you are sort of a very big company that's looking to in some way sort of standardize what that community management process looks like, those are some, I would say this is really like a no-brainer. I'd say also, to be honest, coming from the recruitment industry, it's a really good space for that, just based on sort of what we touched on. There can be quite negative sentiment around experiences with recruiters. So it's also just safeguarding your own team members from that onslaught. And I guess really any companies, to me, it could be anything from an SME all the way to an enterprise, because if you are a startup, you obviously don't have the resource necessarily to have if you have one person in your marketing team, they're probably wearing, for lack of a better word, like many hats, many roles. And this is something that we know is really key and really crucial in the age of AI. So I would say like anyone really, from a small company all the way to a big business, I think would benefit from this setup.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for your time, Gabby. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's been awesome to work with you. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Thank you so much.